Welcome to the Tesla Power Podcast. This is where we're building the Tesla energy community, covering solar panels, solar roof, and Powerwall for your home. I'm Aaron Brady. Today, let's talk about how annual solar production is estimated. Are Powerwalls a bad deal? And does solar add value to your home? Then, let's talk about residential energy and storage business growth for Tesla. Let's do it. So as per usual, we'll kick off the pod with community input. You can participate in several ways. You can leave a comment below. You can link your own YouTube videos, or you can call 203-816-5150, or you can email teslapowerpodcast@gmail.com. And for those of you feeling ambitious, you can record an unlisted video question in the YouTube app. You can send a link so I can put your video question in the show. Sound cool, right? Let's see who's the most ambitious and ends up doing that first. First up, though, we've got an email from Robert Gamble. He asks about how solar production is estimated. Let's read it. Quote, I've been enjoying your show and have enjoyed learning about Tesla solar systems. I have a Tesla solar roof and 2 Powerwalls, but I've not yet heard you talk about finding the power production of the solar tiles. One side I know of is PV watts. From what I can tell, you need to know more than the wattage in kilowatts of the panels to know the annual power production in kilowatt hours. Can you do a show detailing how a system's production is calculated? Thanks. Attached are some pictures from my system, end quote. Now let's get to the good stuff first. Here are the photos of his installation. We're going to start off with an aerial view. It looks great. I mean, look at how much better his roof looks than his neighbors. It's kind of striking. He's got his neighbors on the left and the right. It's such a big difference. I mean, his roof is new, of course, but, you know, we can expect it to look this good basically forever. This is what it looks like from the street. I mean, it looks so good. I really, really dig it. So let's get to the question. Fundamentally, we need to know 4 things. We need to know how much your system can produce at its theoretical max. We need to know how it's oriented, like which way the panels are facing. We need to know where it's located on planet Earth so we can estimate the effects of like seasons and weather. And then we've got to know how much efficiency loss is in the architecture. And more simply said, we're basically starting with what would be an ideal system, its ideal production, and then we're going to subtract based on how much your actual situation sucks. So let's head over to the production calculator from NREL. NREL, for those of you wondering, that stands for the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, by the way. So I'm putting in my address just to get us started. It's not going to be so hard to get started. We're going to confirm that our pin is in the right square so we can be confident that they're giving us the right data. So that's going to be this first bit right here. And that does happen to be right around the area that it needs to be. So we'll go to the tool. After we do this, it starts to get really complicated. I want to use my system details to walk through the tool. So I'll enter the DC system size, which is 13.5 kilowatts. I realize after this, though, that this tool is really not meant for the solar roof. I mean, we can get probably close, but it's not going to be super accurate because it lists only traditional solar panel options. Ultimately, though, you know, we will have the opportunity to compare how this tool estimates production compared with what the estimate says on my contract. So that should at least keep us in the ballpark. So we're going to do a standard module type. It's a fixed roof mount. We're going to stick with the system losses about 15%. Tilt degree is about 20% for my roof. And the azimuth, we're not exactly due south. We are tilted just a little bit. So we're going to keep that at 20. And let me take it full screen so we can see it just a little bit better. So we'll go to the PV watts estimate, and we can see it's 11,917 kilowatt hours per year. Let's see how that compares with the contract. So if I pull up the contract, take that full screen, and yeah, 11,871. That they are not far off from each other. That's a little bit surprising, actually, because I didn't go through all of the nitty-gritty details on the NREL website. Now, I of course don't yet have a full year of data, actual data, right, to see how these estimates align with actual production. But most of what these estimate tools are trying to do is just adjust for the amount of sun my roof's going to get over the course of a year. Now, another tool that I've used is Google's Project Sunroof. It's a similar tool that takes into account your latitude and orientation, but it also has a few years of solar and shading data that makes the whole process a little bit more automatic. It's also not giving us a yearly production value in kilowatt hours, but when I dug into the methodology, it does show that the average yearly production in my area is 10,300 kilowatt hours, which is darn close to both the NREL tools and my contracts estimate. That really got me thinking. I mean, this is a bunch of evidence that this may just be a generic function of latitude. I mean, it's worth pointing out that the biggest variable is weather. You know, if you have a wet year, you'll produce much less electricity from solar than you would in a dry year. I mean, there's also black swan events like, I don't know, volcanic eruptions, right? They put particulates in the air, and that reduces your solar production. You guys might remember even there was a famous event in 1816. Mount Tambora erupted and caused a volcanic winter the entire year. It's known as the year without a summer. And, you know, it led to crop failures, major food shortages. So these are called estimates for good reason. You know, the variability from year to year can be significant. Now, the greatest contributor for a fixed solar array is going to be latitude, as we can see in these calculations we just walked through. And things that are notably missing from these tools, which is just as super surprising, is the efficiency of the panels, the efficiency of the power electronics, the architecture of the system, like whether you're using string inverters versus microinverters, or maybe you're using optimizers, right? It implies that these are not worth the effort being put into them. I mean, for all the additional money for designing them into a system and installing them, they seem to make a negligible difference in the estimated production of the system over a year. Now, I'm not saying they don't make a difference. Obviously, they do. I'm not saying that it's not good to pursue higher efficiency and better architectures, but it's just interesting, right, that they're omitted from these estimating tools and might be an indication of the contributing value at scale. They might just not make that big a difference. Now, the NREL tool does try to take some of this into account by including the system loss and the accompanying loss calculator, but this isn't how solar is marketed. And honestly, it'd be a lot more user-friendly if they used panel efficiency, power electronics efficiency, and architecture in the tool. That way you could compare it to quotes that you get from suppliers. I mean, I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to make the tool technology agnostic, but I think it makes the tool less useful as a result. Now, there are like tools online that you can go through that'll give you some small indication, but these are really meant to funnel your business to local solar providers rather than really provide you with useful data. And, you know, they're more pricing driven rather than, you know, product driven or it's production driven, right? So they aren't approaching it really from the same direction at all that NREL and Project Sunroof are. Now, there was an article that I thought was very interesting and was worth bringing up. This is from EnergySage, and they raise a great question. Let me pull this up. I'll take it full screen. And this might be what Robert's driving at here, right? This is from that EnergySage article asking how does a solar installer estimate production. So let me just scroll down a bit here. They say in one of these questions right here, why are two installers quoting the same system size on my home and estimating a different amount of production? Which one is right? Well, neither one is right. You know, this is ultimately why it's probably the wrong metric to be looking at. The only way you can compare a system's size and price is if you're comparing the exact same design, which is going to be super unlikely. If you've got two different installers, they're going to have different products and different architectures that they're going to recommend for your system. You know, because the NREL and Project Sunroof estimators are in the ballpark, it's probably good enough to choose the quote with the best system size for the price. So just ignore the estimated amount of production. I know I've probably strayed here at the end, but I think it's a really great question. It definitely got me thinking, and I think these are really questions that we should be paying a lot of attention to. All right, let's pull up the next email. This one's from Dwight Adams. He asks how to calculate the sweet spot for battery storage. This is a bit of a long one, but it's worth it in the end. Let's read. So I've been watching your videos, and I've come to the conclusion there must be a sweet spot, or close enough, in the size of a home solar system matched to a set of batteries to store the solar generated for use during the night. However, I'm not exactly sure how to calculate that sweet spot. I've been reviewing our home's energy use, but like you and others, I anticipate getting an EV in the next few years. As mentioned on episode 32, the batteries must meet the home's highest energy demands, particularly in the 5 to 7 p.m. timeframe as a minimum, but ideally through the night until the next day when solar is again available. One consideration is in Northeast Florida where I live. Our summer energy use and our production is higher compared to winter heating using a heat pump. I'm curious if you've determined or have seen a means to size a solar system with a matched battery pack to use minimum grid power and by sending as little power back to the grid, which the utilities do not want. My assumption is it's best to have too much battery backup versus too little. The battery must be able to absorb higher kilowatts in the early morning hours, ideally no more than 2 hours, and power the home. The battery must be able to power the home loads at peak power usage in the evening and ideally through most of the night. How do we make this a positive experience for homeowners to generate home energy with solar and batteries and the utilities to protect their grid system if that's possible? End quote. Now, there are so many variables here. I mean, we could definitely fall down a well of decision paralysis very easily. I really like your ultimate goal, though, of making this a positive experience for homeowners while also protecting the grid. So let's see what we can reason through to get to that end. Now, the first thing to do is to estimate the amount of energy we're going to need. You've been doing the hard work here by tracking your own usage, but let's go through what most of us do to get that number. And we can go to the Tesla website for our first indication. If we click order now, you'll see that they are just looking for 2 details. And this is to simplify things. Most solar estimates are going to boil this down to the average total energy used in a single month. They'll calculate this by asking for your address and your average monthly electric bill. And they're going to use that to back into your average usage. They use your address to determine your rate, and then your bill to calculate how much you use. So if we pull up the calculator, if we just clear that out, at my address, my electricity is estimated to be about 27 cents per kilowatt hour, and my average electricity bill before solar, was $400 a month. So let's take that 400 and let's divide it by 27 cents. And you can see my average usage is about 1,480 kilowatt hours used per month. Now, this number does not account for what I use at any time of the day. It doesn't account for any future electricity usage growth. And let's be honest, most families will use more until their kids leave the house, at which time they'll use significantly less. And this doesn't account for any seasonality. The reality is that all of this variability is going to make it impossible for us to calculate a helpful sweet spot over the 25-year lifespan of the system. But what you can do is you can find a sweet spot for your current usage. Now, for me, that's about 50 kilowatt per day, right? So if we take that 1481 and we divide it by the 30 days in a month, it's about 50. And we're in the 4.2 peak sun hour range. We're going to look at that sun hour map here in a little bit, which we can use then to divide out how big our system should be. It should be about 12 kilowatt system to cover my usage. Now, we also need to adjust for efficiency loss because we don't just get to use all of that electricity as it's being generated. Some of it will be stored, some of it will be transmitted, and the architecture we're using here is about a 15% efficiency loss, so we'll need to grow the system a little bit. So let's multiply that by the 15%. I think I kind of messed that up, right? So it's about 12, and we're going to multiply it by 1.15, right? So it takes us to about 14 kilowatts. And all of that, of course, is going to need to be placed on the south side of the roof. As it happens, let's check out my layout. I'll go ahead and take that full screen, I think. You can see that I've got the 13.5 kilowatt system, but some of it is on the north side of the house, right here. Some of it's on the west side of the house. And that drops my average generation from its, ideal maximum to about half of what my ideal maximum would be from my 13.5 kilowatt system. So if we go back and look at the contract, we can see, of course, we looked at this a second ago, but it's estimating only 11,871 kilowatt hours per year. And that's the first year. And that divides into an amount. Let's go back to the calculator. So 11,871 divided by 365 days. So that's a daily estimated average of 32 kilowatt hours per day that I'm generating. And that's down from the estimated 56 kilowatts per day average if I put all of my production on the south side of the roof. And that explains exactly why I'm only generating about 40% of my usage at the moment, in spite of my system being so large. So let's do the same set of calculations for your home, Dwight. If you're considering an electric car, then we can increase these calculations by about 10 kilowatt hours per day. Just in anticipation of that increased usage. Now, you don't offer any usage statistics for your home in the email, but if we just go with the 30 kilowatt hours average in the United States plus the 10 kilowatt hours for the car, then we will use 40 kilowatt hours per day to find a sweet spot for matching battery storage to your solar production. Let's go to that unbound solar peak sun hours map. If we scroll down, we can see that Florida falls squarely. You're in Northeast Florida. It doesn't really matter because all of Florida, basically, is in the same. We'll see in the sun hours map that you're in the 4.5 hour zone, which will mean you can generate your required 40 kilowatt hours of electricity with what size solar array? Let's pull it up. So if you're 40 times 4.5, no, 40 divided by 4.5, you can get all of this generated with about a 9 kilowatt system. But of course, we want to calculate for efficiency loss, so we're going to multiply that by 1.15. You'll need to grow that system then slightly to about 10.2 kilowatts. That's assuming you're putting all of the production capacity on the south side of your roof. So that's the solar production side of it. If every solar array is paired with equal storage capacity, we're in the best position to meet the goal you've set up for us, which is making this a positive experience for homeowners and protecting the grid. Now, I'm not sure that's practical just yet because batteries are pretty expensive, but if we're going for gold here, right, then we're going to try to accomplish this. We would use the following rule of thumb. Storage capacity should equal daily solar production. Now, since we're saying you're going to generate 32 kilowatt hours per day on average, well, that's my system, right? I should have between 2 and 3 Powerwalls to match that. I happen to have 2. But I wish I had more for my peak production days in the summer. But I have more capacity that I can use over the winter months when my production is much lower. So should I say it? Sweet spot accomplished? Maybe. So let's do the same for your system. Bring up that calculator again. These are all made up numbers for you, but these are going to be average numbers for everybody. That daily usage was at 40 kilowatt hours. We're going to add 15% for efficiency loss. You'll end up, you'll need to make your daily average production at about 46 kilowatt hours. So your battery should be about 46 kilowatt hours. Since the Powerwall is 14 kilowatts, you'll be very close to 3. So if we divide that by 14, we're very close to 3 Powerwalls. Now, let's take a quick detour because, it's not just about the kilowatt hour capacity, but it's also the power that you're going to need at any given time. And each Powerwall delivers 5 kilowatts of continuous power. And since you'll have 3 Powerwalls, you'll have a total times 5, right? You'll have a total of about 15 kilowatts that those 3 batteries can deliver collectively at any given moment. And that means you'll need to throttle your car's charging speed to make sure you're not exceeding this capability while also running your HVAC system, your heat pump in your instance. So, Dwight, I'm interested to hear what Tesla's recommendations are for you when you go to their tool. Generally, they're pretty close. There are other considerations for balancing battery capacity with usage. And I'd say the exercise doesn't at all cover worst case scenarios, right? And that's not the point of it, right? We're looking for sweet spot, not worst case. Another thing to consider is that you're still using energy while you're producing energy. So putting 100% of your production into storage isn't likely to happen. You'll still have uses for that excess storage capacity. It comes, if you have excess storage capacity, you can help the grid buffer their own power from other solar installations, and they can put that power in your battery. And of course, you should be compensated for that service. And that brings to mind the software side of the Tesla home energy business. I'd like to hear more about the software side of the business because it's this software that should be adding value for both the utility and for the asset owner, for us, right? So lots and lots to think about here. And it's likely that most will find this calculation economically suboptimal, right? Because the batteries are still pretty expensive. But it will result in the most positive homeowner experience, and it'll definitely protect the grid. So let's discuss more in the comments. Next up, we have an update from Brian. Let's take a look at his installation. He sent in a photo. So this is what his house looks like now with his completed solar glass roof. I think it looks awesome. It fits better with the architecture than I thought it might. I thought it might look a little bit too modern, but man, it looks great. And Brian, it's not the only new thing in your life. Congratulations on your new baby, man. It's been really helpful to see your project progress. Thanks for sharing all that detail and helping to educate the rest of us. And thank you to Robert Gamble, Dwight Adams, Brian Foote for your input. Anyone else with something to contribute, send your YouTube video link comments below. You can call 203-816-5150, or you can email teslapowerpodcast@gmail.com. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll check in on some news. Inside EVs reports on an Engineering Explained video comparing a truck and a home battery. Quote, want home backup? I'm not sure where this is actually. Oh, I'm reading the title here. Want home backup power? Don't buy a Tesla Powerwall, buy a truck. And this is a comparison of the Ford F-150 Lightning to the Tesla Powerwall, and it leads to a surprising conclusion, end quote. Now, surprise, you can't buy a Ford F-150 Lightning. Definitely not for that price, at least not yet. But let's face it, you probably won't ever be able to, right? One of the very interesting things that we see right now is inflation. Things are getting a lot more expensive. And I don't even think, Tesla is going to be able to honor their pricing with their Cybertruck. And, Ford is going to have a really hard time, honoring their lowest price fleet trucks even. Something else that's super interesting, I know I reference this guy a lot, but Jack Rickard was a freaking prophet. Like, he really understood what people were going to be needing in the future because he was basically living that future. But he pointed out that dedicated home storage probably makes more sense than vehicle to grid. And for starters, he would point out that you need to drive the truck at some point, and that'll leave your house with no power. But more practically, you're not going to have the truck at home charging when your solar array is producing energy, right? The point of the battery storage is to keep the energy that you're making so you can use it later. And if the truck's not there to capture that energy for use later, then what good is it? So these 2 points, there's the matter of best form factor and chemistry for the job. We're kind of seeing that it's likely that a huge LFP battery or a lithium iron phosphate battery will be cheaper and longer lasting in stationary storage. And honestly, by the time you can get this truck, lithium iron phosphate home battery options will probably change this calculus materially. So this article is right. It's a surprising conclusion, but it's also not a real decision you can make today anyway. Next up, we have an article from Solar Power World. They write about the value that solar brings to a home. Quote, what is the biggest obstacle solar contractors face when trying to show the value of solar installation? Does this impede their ability to close sales? And it goes on to say, like the famous saying goes, real estate is local. As a result, the homeowner, the real estate agent, the appraiser, and lender aren't concerned with national averages, but how the home's specific solar PV system will be valued by the market. Since solar panels are likely one of the largest investments many homeowners will make in their home, they want to feel comfortable that when they sell the property, the investment will be reflected in their home value. And later they point out there are multiple factors which can contribute to a homeowner not realizing the potential return on investment when they sell their home. But the number one is documentation. We continually hear from appraisers that they don't receive any information or documentation on the PV system, end quote. I think this is a bunch of crap. No one cares about documentation. I mean, tell me in the comments if you disagree. If you do, that's fine. But I would say the number one thing, for us, right? The number one thing the creative director, wife, and I wanted for a home was curb appeal. And a close second, we wanted a good layout. Just anecdotally, we looked at a home on the water with a gorgeous view. It also happened to have solar panels. And we barely gave it any consideration. The solar panels were ugly from the street and the layout just didn't work. Honestly, though, I would love to talk with an investor or real estate agent, and maybe even the best would be an appraiser, about solar and its contribution to home's value. There's a lot of debate about this, and I'll need to find all three of these categories of people to talk to, and we'll get into it, and we'll get some real detail on it. But one thing that's very interesting is that we had the home appraised just before the solar roof was installed on this house last year. So what I could probably do is just get an updated appraisal this spring to see how the appraiser sees the Tesla solar roof, either contributing to the overall value of the home or just being irrelevant. So let's do that. I think that's the right way to approach this. All right, last up, we have Inside EVs reports on Tesla Energy's business, noting the mixed results that we saw this last quarter. Let's bring it full screen. Quote, the Tesla Energy business expanded in 2021, although the fourth quarter brought year-over-year decline, end quote. And what most cite as the worst part of this whole thing is that the decline in solar deployments is really surprising since the Solar City acquisition. Kind of losing my voice here. But there was a chart that I wanted to show here. You can see it's down and it's hovering around this, about 50% of what it was at its highs. And the thing that I really want to point out is it isn't as bad as it seems for the industry as a whole. There are other players out there that have continued to grow. So the industry as a whole is up above the 2016 levels in spite of Tesla's poor performance. And the more important bit to keep in mind, we can't go full steam ahead with solar deployments without the battery storage to back it up. I know I say the same thing all the time, broken record. But Tesla is the one working hardest on this part of the problem. And it'll be to all of our benefit when they've grown supply, mostly by dragging suppliers along with them into higher production, and once they've been able to navigate chip constraints. So I'm keeping this in mind when looking at the solar numbers. They're not going to be a leading indicator. Battery storage is going to be the leading indicator, and it's growing at a healthy rate, and that rate is increasing. So that's it for the news. Let's take another break, and when we come back, we'll talk about what happens to our solar roof when we move, and we'll look at some production numbers. So what I want to do is I want to get the phone streaming. So we'll take a quick pause. I'll come back. All right, and I'll take the, I'll insert the phone, I think. There we go. Pull Tesla Solar out. While this is loading, our daily production curves have been pretty choppy the last few days. I've had a lot of cloud cover, but the days are getting longer, and you can see that in the energy generation details. So if we go over to solar production, you can see 23 kilowatt hours generated so far today. Yesterday was awesome, but before that, you can see big carves out of the production curve. This one especially bad. We're averaging about 20 kilowatt hours per day, and let's see what we've reached this month. Over 200 kilowatt hours this month, which is pretty great. So let's hop over to my brother-in-law's system. He's got a traditional solar panel system, and I think this is his curve from today. Let's just reload it to make sure we're looking at the right data. He's been surpassing our peak production already. It's because his panels have been covered with snow that he's been, lagging behind us. But with these clear days and with the snow melting, he's been doing really well with production. It's like yesterday he got to almost 35 kilowatt hours produced on his solar panels, which is awesome. I've barely been breaking 30 kilowatt hours. I've been trying to capture, the last day of each month so I can compare our yearly production numbers. But I have to see if I can get that detail elsewhere in his app since I've missed a couple of months worth of data. I really want to make sure that I'm accurate with it. It's not that one is better than the other, right? Solar panels versus solar roof are just different technologies. And these are interesting comparison points between them. Certainly production is one of the most important of them, right? And PTO. I haven't made any effort since last year. I need to call the Tesla hotline for an update, though. I expect I'll have something for the next podcast. I know I've said it before, but this time I mean it. Anyway, that'll do it for episode 42 of the Tesla Power Podcast. Please use my referral code and save yourself some money. If you're ordering a Tesla solar roof, you can save yourself $500. If you're ordering solar panels, you can save $300. And to get that referral code, you will navigate to the page ts.la/Aaron62310 to place your order. And I'm Aaron Brady, your Tesla Residential Energy Community Organizer. Let's do this again on the next video.